Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Sestrino back here for another Survivor time trip. And today I'm taking Mike back with me to go back to Survivor the Amazon and a time when we all were full bloom. So give it up for the man who will fit right in. Give it up for Mike Bloom.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot that you had that budgie smuggler going on after a pretty raucous night of wine drinking. Yeah, I mean, you are the guest this week, Rob. As RuPaul would say, we are keeping it in the family. Very appropriate for the family visit episode of Survivor the Amazon.
Family visit episode. This is episode number 11 canonically, episode 12 on Paramount Plus because I include the recap episode for some reason. Sour Grapes is what they called it, the final 6, where Christy Smith gets voted out. Very sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very sad situation. Obviously, she's going to let that sadness show in the final words. But, I mean, when you so heartily volunteered to be the subject of one of these time trip episodes, I really had to go to this episode first and foremost because, listen, I'll certainly get your thoughts about the move that happened before this, which is, of course, you flipping on Jenna, Heidi, and Alex to vote Alex out. But
Sure.
I do think in the annals of Survivor history, this is a move that I think is game-changing in a number of ways that maybe doesn't get talked about in today's modern-day parlance, but I think it was certainly a big move made at the time, and I think cemented you as one of the early game's biggest flippers, considering that, you know, Road 2, the fall of the Road to 4, they'd flipped over and they stuck around, but you were sort of, you know, bipping and bopping around like a bit of a pinball. And so I'm excited to get your thoughts on all of this and your entire methodology.
Excited to talk about it. Have we ever gotten to talk Survivor the Amazon?
We have not. And can I just say that, listen, I'm eternally grateful for the working relationship and friendship we have cultivated for the better part of over a decade. But there is a 2003 part of me deep down inside the recesses of my heart that is jumping up and down with joy that I get to talk to Rob Cesternino about Survivor the Amazon and the move he made at the final 6. I never thought this would have happened in many ways. So now I get to interview you and to have you talk about one of the most seismic games of the first handful of seasons of the show.
Sure. But what's your origin story, Mike? How did you get into Survivor? What was your... I don't know if I know this.
So I am not a day oneer. I guess I'm like a day 42er in that the first episode I watched was the Joel Klug boot from Survivor Borneo. It was one of those things, and you've recounted this a number of times, including in your, best-selling book about how there was just such a big word of mouth around Survivor, especially in the first handful of episodes. And at the time, no Paramount Plus, not even a CBS inner tube to watch these episodes. And so you just kind of had to jump on and kind of piece things together through context clues. So my very first access point to Survivor was, you know, the Marines coming in and Rudy eating dog food and Joel Klug for getting voted out because of a comment that Jervis made. And
you were hooked.
I mean, I would say that more so was the next week, which is the Merge boot, which is an episode that, spoiler alert, hopefully we'll talk about at some point in this entire process, that really got me hooked. But I was absolutely captivated from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're 2 weeks after me. So I will always have that over you, Mike. So I've been watching Survivor for 2 more weeks than you.
Hold that over my head as much as you can.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, let's go back. I had watched this episode about a year ago. I talked about it when it was on Pluto TV, and I did it then, and so it is kind of top of mind. I watched it again today to talk about it here with you today. So we can go into whatever is wherever you want to go.
Oh my God.
I guess let me set the stage.
Yes.
Of this is the final 6, that there was a big swing that happened at the final 7 where I was working with Alex and Jenna and Heidi. Alex had told me that if we got to the final 4, he was going to, I don't remember if he said that that Jenna and Heidi weren't going to vote with each other. And so he was just going to then also cast a vote for me. And I was like, I don't like that. And so I voted out Alex.
Yeah, so I actually want to start with that, before we even get into the final 6, because so much of this is predicated on what happened in the final 7, because I did rewatch that episode as well. And what Alex told you basically was, well, we know the girls won't vote for each other. And so if I win immunity, I'm going to vote for you. And I expect you to do the same. So I'm curious from your perspective, was that like the thing to really ignite you to make that flip, or was this more of a premeditated move for you?
No, I was really in tight with Alex and Jenna and Heidi. And I really, just to go back to the mindset of 24-year-old me, I thought that Alex was just like the coolest guy that I ever met. There was like a lot of like hero worship on my part of like looking up to Alex, that he lived in LA. I just thought that he was like the greatest guy ever. I couldn't believe that this was my friend. And especially when we were on the guys' camp. And then I felt like he started to get a little like girl crazy when we got to when we switched. And then he really was like head over heels for Shauna. And that was a whole thing. And then we voted Shauna out and thought that, okay, he'll be back to normal. But he then, I know I have the reputation of like, oh, I was like blinded by what the women were doing. And I did talk about the women a lot, but it wasn't necessarily like that I was courting the women in Survivor the Amazon. But he did get like very close with like Jenna and Heidi. And it did seem like, at times I guess I felt like that with them. And those were the people I was the closest with after Dina was gone. I really had to throw all in with them. And based off of, if we went back an episode earlier, I kind of had less options after Dino went out. And I said, okay, well, now I'm all in with Alex and Jen and Heidi. But I really did feel like fourth out of four in that group. And I didn't really see a way around anything there. And I just was like looking at the other people that are out there. And it's like, well, nobody's really talking to Butch and to Matt and to Christy. And like, what if I was with them and I would be their king?
Well, the king is perhaps not getting the best reception from those he abandoned in his wake here. So let's get into the start of this episode where there is some fallout, to say the least. Because as you mentioned, not only was Alex burned, but Jenna and Heidi were in the process.
Yeah.
When you do a little bit of damage control, obviously this is going to be a whole 3 days worth of at least attempted damage control. You say in the moment, though, coming back to camp, like, Alex was lying to me about a bunch of things. Did you ever bring up in the course of trying to make good with Jen and Heidi, like what Alex had told you? Hey, he said he wanted to get rid of me at Final Four.
I don't remember if I did or not. I think that they were not in a place that they really wanted to hear okay, here's the like play-by-play of what happened. I betrayed them. They were very angry and upset with me. And I think they just wanted to, really, give me the what for after that. I don't think they really wanted to have like a logical, like, back and forth of like, well, but why did you do this move?
Did their reaction surprise you at all? Because I mean, Heidi, I don't know if she cries or if she's just really emotional at one point, but clearly in the immediate wake of this, that they are quite in their feels.
Right. I had a bad read on, Jenna in particular, but also Heidi, that I guess I, had a hard time of thinking about, like, I guess this was a struggle for me as a player to predict what other people would do, because I only could see things through my own way, how I would handle it. And I think if I was in that situation, I think I would try to play it off as, hey, like, it's cool. Don't worry. We're still working together. Right. And I thought that that's how they would take it. And I thought that they would, I guess, mistakenly, I thought that they were like, hey, well, I don't like, they'll fight each other. But they both don't want to be the next to go. Wrongly, very wrongly, did not think that they would just double down on their position of like, hey, we hate you.
Well, I guess what was your tactic then when you were making the move, knowing, okay, I'm going to try to make it up to them, get back in their good graces? And how did that compare to what you actually did upon perhaps being a bit surprised by their reaction?
Well, I think in a way it kind of helped me that they really chewed me out. And so I think I was able to get like a little sympathy from Butch and Matt and Christy. And so it really did help make it feel like I was like taking the brunt of it for them. So I think in a way, while I did not enjoy that, I think it did ultimately help me. And again, it was not calculated on my part, but I think that that's what ended up happening.
There's going to be a confessional of you later on in the midst of this entire brouhaha when you say that you're a lone wolf, you're a mercenary, you're a free agent, perhaps, to quote Ozzy. Was that the attitude you were walking into this episode with, though? What after you had flipped, was your attitude, okay, I'm going to write it out to the final four with Butch, Matt, and Christy?
I think that that was my thought there. But I think then once you start flipping, I think it's like very addictive. And you'll see in this episode when I go to Jenna with talking about, hey, I have another plan. I had a plan that was going to be even crazier that I wanted to do. And ultimately, like, that's really what I started thinking about. Like, yeah, who cares? I'll flip back to them. The only issue was that Jenna and Heidi didn't really want to play ball with me anymore. But I had 3 more flips that I wanted to do.
Talk to me more about that. Do you remember the playbook you had mapped out for yourself?
Yes, I really started to think about it. And it's really after there's going to be the family reward in this episode. And Mateo is going to win the reward. And then he gives up his reward so that we all got to see our loved ones. And everybody's very excited. Like, oh, wow, Matt's the greatest guy. I can't believe he did that. And that, my 24-year-old broken brain is like, well, now we can't go to the end with Matthew. Now people like him too much. And so,
I think you call him at one point the patron saint of reward challenges.
Yeah, why does he so great? Now I don't know if I can beat Matthew in the end, but nobody likes Jenna. So again, wrongly. But she's also going to go on to win challenges. Like at that time, nobody liked day 30 Jenna. So I was thinking, my thought was, okay, what if, we vote out Heidi next, I believe. Okay, so at the final 7, or this is the final 6, if we vote out Heidi, and then after Heidi is gone, now it's just Jenna. And I was always more afraid of Heidi. Again, wrongly, I was always more afraid of Heidi than Jenna, who's the ultimate winner of the season, goes on, wins 4 immunity challenges. But I was always I thought Heidi was the danger. But I said, okay, we'll vote out Jenna. And I didn't give Jenna the blow-by-blow of it because I didn't want to. I thought that, well, she can't expose me if I don't tell her what the plan is. But I say to her, like, hey, I have a plan for us. And I thought that she'd be like, okay, goody, let's work together. And she still was like, she wanted to spit in my face more than she wanted to potentially go to, and she wins. So how can I say that this was bad? But it did work out that way. I don't know if that was necessarily the plan. Anyway, my thought was vote out Heidi at 6. And then after that, then I think then I said, okay. And then when it's the final 5 of me, Butch, Matt, Christy, and Jenna, what if we vote out Matt at 5? And then we vote out Butch at 4. And then it would be like I would flip from I would flip from Matt and Butch to go with Jenna and Heidi, or to go with Jenna and Christy, who did not like each other at all. And I thought that Heidi was the one who could really kind of patch things up. Like, you never see Jenna talk to Christy in this episode. It's Heidi who's doing like the negotiating, and Jenna is kind of like with her arms folded, like next to Christy. So Jenna and Christy were never going to be on the same page. But I kind of thought, like, well, if I could get to the final 3 with Jenna and Christy, then go to the end, and neither of them is going to take the other one. They're both going to take me. So my thought was vote out Heidi, vote out Matt, vote out Butch, final 3 with Jenna and Christy. I mean, I don't know who on the jury is voting for me at that point.
Yeah, considering that you would have, burned Heidi and then would have burned Matt after. Even this episode, he shows how locked in he was with you.
Yeah, but again, this was the idea I came up with, and I was like, why not? This is fun.
Well, I think also there probably must have been a bit of a mental factor as well for you. And we talked with Penner last week, and I imagine he thought a little bit about this as well when he flips at the merge of Cook Islands, where it's a little bit like, listen, these people kind of hate me. I know that maybe making this the great equalizer and making everyone kind of hate me by flipping back and forth, maybe all these negatives will equal a positive at the end of the day, where I'm not just absolutely offending one group, but kind of being an equal opportunity offender with my gameplay.
Yeah, I guess I thought if I got to the end and I could say that I did all these things, and if I sat there with Jenna, I just thought that, okay, well, maybe Heidi and Alex were going to vote for Jenna in the final two, maybe Dave. But I thought, like, well, what if I could, like, pick up the other people? Like, I felt like Christy still won't vote for Jenna. Like, Butch and Matt still won't vote for Jenna. Like, I felt like that I still, like, could maybe, I had as good of a chance as anything.
You mentioned Christy, who obviously is going to be the subject of this episode in more ways than one. I'm curious about your relationship with her at this point, because there is a brief scene when you're going to try to check in with her. You know, she affirms her loyalty to the new four, but it should be noted the two of you did not play together until you hit the merge, which is only, you know, a week prior to this. So what was your dynamic like at this point?
I thought that I always had a good relationship with Christy. I felt like I had a pretty good relationship with everybody. And I think that a lot of the times with Christy, that she had had a bad experience with the women early on. Dina was her person. And then ultimately, I think she gets left out of the Dina vote on the blind side. And now, so really nobody's talking to her. Even like Butch and Matt didn't really interact with her too much. And so I felt like that I was always friendly to her. So I thought that we had a pretty good open line of communication, especially at this point when I go to her in the previous episode and tell her I want to vote out Alex. And she's so happy that somebody wants to vote out Alex. And so her and I thought had a really good relationship. And I wanted to work with her in terms of what we were going to do next. But then she got very wishy-washy with me.
Well, we'll get to that wishy-washy moment, but before that, we do see Jenna and Heidi coming with all the hats and all of the hands to her to, you know, pitch, hey, let's get the girls back together. We'll force this 3-3 tie. Were you aware that any of this was going on? I imagine you were trying to keep your distance from Jenna and Heidi at this point, but did you know they were pitching themselves to Christy?
I'm trying to remember it's hard for me to distinguish between what's in the episode and what was real life. But I feel like that, I could see that they were going to her, and I think she was like pretty open about the fact that the girls were saying to her, hey, top three. And we were saying like, but Christy, you could be the last girl. You could be the last girl. You could beat them. And she's like, she really liked that idea. She really liked the idea of, hey, I'll be the last woman that's left, and I'll also beat Jenna and Heidi.
Yeah, I believe she asks out loud at this point, is it better to have $1 million, or is it better to be the final girl that kicked butt, or do you like the relationships that you have with mosquitoes?
Yeah. So I think it was hard to pin down like what her ultimate goal was.
I mean, I want to talk about Christy as well, just in general, because I do feel like in Survivor history, not to say she's largely forgotten, but I do think it's so interesting that modern day discourse, especially, there's a lot of talk about casting people on Survivor for their stories and the editing being based around their stories. And I think we sometimes forget about the stories of someone like Christy, who is deaf and is thrown into this game that is all about not only reading what people are saying, but whether, you know, they actually mean what they are saying, both the language that's being used and the body language. I mean, how do you look back on her casting all the way back in season 6?
Yeah, you know, honestly, it really wasn't as big of a story in the season, I think, as it probably should have been. I think that it was something that she was dealing with. And I don't know how much of the show she had seen beforehand. And I don't know if how much she knew of like what she was getting into. But I think it was probably underplayed in the show of probably how hard it was for her, especially at night when things were really dark, when she wears hearing aids, but also she would read lips also. So I think things probably were really hard for her at nighttime. And she also was somebody who, you know, I think at the first signs of that it wasn't working, I think that she also would be like, hey, screw them. You know, I don't want to be. So she was kind of like a loner also. And so I think it didn't help her socially of how she was in terms of winning the game. So, or doing well in the game. And then also she was with people who really didn't go out of their way to try to be inclusive to her also. So I think it was kind of a bad combo where she, I think, had like the instinct of like, okay, you know what, screw you guys. And then also the people that she was playing with weren't like, no, Christy, come here, come on, like let's really make sure and there were a couple of people that were, but I think largely, I think people were far more worried about their own game.
Yeah, I think it is interesting to again look back on not only the way her journey was edited, which I agree, it gets brought up, I feel like, in the first few episodes, but you also wonder from a modern day lens, like how much Matt chat would be dedicated to, Christy playing as this deaf woman. Obviously, we've had deaf contestants since, but again, it is something that it's almost like when Charla played in The Amazing Race season 5, where like it is a big historical first. And it has us definitely viewing Christy as a player, I think, in a fundamentally different way, as you mentioned. But it doesn't necessarily get underlined or highlighted in the edit. And I imagine that was also the case in real life as well, right? You're a month in at this point. I don't know how much things have been fairly normalized to you about just the way Christy lives.
Well, I think that if this was to happen if this was Survivor 46 instead of Survivor 6, I think that people would have maybe thought like, well, I think this is going to look bad on television and we don't want to vote out a person who's playing the game, who's hard of hearing, and the audience is going to be uber sympathetic to that person. I mean, in some ways, it was really, she was just treated the same as like any other person who was out there, for better or for worse. I do think that the show really would have highlighted her journey, again, for better or for worse, in the way that the show is put together now in modern times. I think it really would be treated as like this really incredible, triumphant experience that she's going through.
All right, well, let's get into a moment that will take you across the frigid waters of the Rio Negro. Let's talk about this reward challenge, Rob, because it's a big one. Of course, it is the family visit, a staple of the old school seasons of Survivor. The challenge itself is to, much like Coach Wade did all these years ago, paddle your own kayak in Brazil to retrieve essentially like one bag of puzzle pieces. And it was also this stages elimination.
I think there was 3.
Okay, but there was this thing where it was, okay, you have to dig up a paddle and the first 4 move on. And
there was eliminations. So yeah, there was 6 of us left, but there were 4 paddles that you had to dig up. There were 4 boats. And if you didn't have a paddle, then you were out immediately. And then you had to row the boat. And then I'm not sure if it was 1 question or if there was 3 questions, but if you got the question wrong, the puzzle pieces in your bag were also incorrect. Like it was like just like black pieces.
I think it was edited as only 1, which makes sense because you and Matt move on to the end, and it seems like neither one of you had a problem with getting the puzzle pieces.
Right.
Anyway.
And then the puzzle at the end was like a baby puzzle.
Yeah. I mean, quite literally, I think I have a puzzle that Asher did when he was 3 that is this puzzle. It's just a little snake that gets formed. But I want to talk about maybe the main centerpiece of this challenge, which is the fact that you have this boat that you get to row. And you are not the only person to struggle with this. Matt is really the only one. He's like Kelly Wigglesworth, whitewater rafting through this, no problem. Jenna's boat sinks. Christy's boat sinks. You try to swim it at first, Stephanie LaGrossa style. Then you come back and get in the boat. But talk to me about navigating this native Amazonian boat.
Yeah, and it wasn't even necessarily a matter of like navigating it. I got in the boat. I got in the water. The boat like immediately sinks. And so I started swimming to see if I could get across. I think that maybe if Jenna or Christy had already gone in the water and were already swimming, and then I went out for like 5 feet and like, nah, I should get the boat back. And then it's like, I kind of like fished the boat out of the water and then got back in the boat. But it's funny. And I know that Jeff has the narration of, hey, and if you sink your boat, you're going to have to swim. But I don't know about that. I don't remember if he said that in person or if it was the type of thing where it was like an ADR line that was after the season, because all through Survivor the Amazon, at every point, every instruction to us was, whatever you do not get in the water. Everything that can kill you is in the water. There's the anaconda, there's the piranha, there's the fish that wants to swim up your urethra. There's eels, there's all sorts of things that are in the water that want to kill you. And at nighttime, they'd be like, hey, whatever you do, don't go near the water. You can't go, the caiman, did I say the caiman crocodile? That everything wants to kill you that's in the water. And now Jenna and Christy like swim across this thing. Now again, there was a point when we were jumped in the water, like when Jenna and Heidi stripped for chocolate and peanut butter. Right. That was in the water. So I don't know if this was like a safe water situation, but I think that also went through my mind. Like, oh yeah, the water is actually very dangerous. I don't want to be in the water, so let me go back and get back in my boat. And I was able to like dump the water out of the boat and then do my paddling across. But Matthew was just like, built for this and was so good in the paddle and rowing the boat that, he just got way ahead of me. I was happy to have a second place finish.
I was taken a bit aback, I agree, by Jeff giving the warning of like, swim at your own cost when actively he's saying it's an option. I mean, I think in retrospect, they're not going to have, a full scooping situation on their hands where like 3/4 of the cast get medevac because they get eaten by caimans. So like, it couldn't have been that dangerous, but I understand from your perspective, the fight or flight mechanic, especially again, when you had been told, I mean, we'll get to this later. I imagine one of the reasons why you packed the Speedo, right, was to provide the necessary compartmentalization so that said urethra fish do not get in the area.
Well, it wasn't my choice. They told us that we had to bring that I got my shopping list for Survivor the Amazon. And again, things weren't as much online like they are now. And so they told you all the clothes you had to bring this, bring the raincoat, bring this, how many pairs of underwear, and then you need a Speedo. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, why do Survivor players need a Speedo? And she's like, oh, they told me like, you don't see it on the show, but they always just have it just like as an extra set of underwear. I was like, okay. And this is like 2002 on Long Island. I'm like, where do I get a Speedo from? And I had to I think it was maybe like one of the first online purchases I think I ever made to buy a Speedo. And then when I went to, I got all my stuff packed. They flew me to Miami. That was where we left to go travel to South America. And then the two women who were the handlers, they like come in my room with like a video camera and they're like, hey, so you want to hear where you're going? I was like, okay, sure. And I did looked on like survivornews.net or whatever, had like reported where we were like, you're going to the Amazon rainforest. I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, do you want to know why you had to bring a Speedo? It's like, oh, why? Like, because there's a fish that wants to swim up your pee hole. Like, oh, good.
Fantastic. Really getting me in the game mindset.
Wait. It's like that. This is like somewhere they need to film that.
Yeah, I don't know why they had to get that because from my memory, none of this was released. Not even in the little Kia DVD that they provided with free test drives. Nothing about bursting into people's hotel rooms and spooking them half to death by talking about fish that could get into their body through.
They were so excited.
That is, listen, whatever gets your jollies, I suppose. And that makes sense. They could have really just gone with the live, like, remember when Reebok sponsored the show? Well, now Speedo's sponsoring it. So we just got to rep the merchandise anytime we can.
Yeah. So that was why we needed to have that with us.
Well, much like a pair of wardrobe that will get you a little close to home in terms of your genitalia, you get a message from home. You get a presence from home here.
What a segue.
Yeah, thank you. In the form of love. The loved one's visits, which, as you mentioned, St. Matthew was able to give up. He died for your sins, Rob, specifically. So we obviously get to see the iconic Roseanne Cesternino get to make her Survivor appearance here. So I'm curious, when you were getting into this entire process, when you were not, vociferously shopping online for the right Speedo, was your mom always going to be your choice of loved one? How did she end up getting involved here as your plus one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was always just, I don't know if my dad really would have been too excited to do it. My brother was, I'm 8.5 years older than my brother. So I was, at this time, I'm 24. So my brother's probably 15. So he's not really old enough. I hadn't started dating Nicole at this point. So there really wasn't any other viable option. And my mom was very excited to go, but we did, and she had to get a passport and everything, but the way that it was presented to us was the person who wins the challenge, they were going to fly them. They were standing by. They were going to fly to the Amazon to meet us for the reward. We did not know that everybody had been there. Now, when we filmed this in November of 2002, the only loved ones visit that we had ever seen with like the whole cast was in Survivor Marquesas. They did bring everybody out. But so it wasn't like, okay, I'm not buying this, that this is what they're doing. Like, it's certainly, I know they have a loved ones visit with everybody in Survivor Thailand. We hadn't seen it. I don't even know if it had aired at that point that my mom came to visit. And so it was very viable that, like, okay, somebody's going to fly here tomorrow.
What was her journey to get there? If I'm remembering correctly, I think one of the many things you talked about during the reflection on this season in TEOS was that, like, everyone was kind of sitting by waiting to hear the person who had gotten voted out, and how much tension was in that room until finally they found out that Alex and therefore his loved one would not be moving forward.
Yeah, that's the way they used to do it. And I'm not sure at what point that they've changed that up. And maybe, you know, that's still like happens to some degree where in the final set, they brought the final 7 out. So I don't know at what point they started traveling. And then so the final 7 was standing by in the Amazon, and they're sort of like, they're not allowed to talk. It's like they're sequestered. And then at some point, tribal council happens, and then they call in on the radio, and then they pull like one of the loved ones. So like one of the loved ones is also getting voted out in Survivor the Amazon. And so I feel very badly, obviously.
The ultimate double duo twist before 50 was even a glimmer in the eye.
Know this at the time, but Alex's mom ends up getting voted out. Now, at points in Survivor in the future, we'll see like in Ponderosa videos that they reunite with other people. But I think that even into the 30s, you know, there's still stories of people who find out that their loved one was like there also in Fiji, and they didn't get to meet up with them because they got voted out. The same, which is you know, kind of a cruel way to ultimately do it. I think that from what my mom had reported, that, you know, Alex's mom really, I think, took it like a champ. But there had been some stories of like, boy, but Penny's husband or boyfriend was like really did not take it well the previous season.
All right, well, definitely, yeah. Hopefully better by comparison. Maybe she got coached like, well, you don't know Penny, but don't be like her significant other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then after, I think then like once Alex's mom got removed from the group, from, again, anecdotally, as per my mom, she said, I think then they sort of like lifted the sequester. I don't know. Again, I don't know what changed of like, in terms of like talking about like who knows who. I think then they were allowed to then talk and engage with each other and say like who their loved ones were. And then they were able to like get to have like a relationship.
Did she have any friends from this group? Any ops from her own final 6?
No, I think that the person that she, I think, was closest with was ultimately Jenna's dad, Mike, who was just like a really nice guy, really great guy. You know, of course, we know about Jenna's mom. Her dad also like passed at a young age, which is also very sad. But he was just a really, really nice guy who I got to know outside of the game, just like a really big heart. Like, yeah, he got along with my mom. I think there was Butch's wife, Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Christy's boyfriend. There was Matt's mom and Heidi's mom.
So good news is that you do get the chance, thanks to the actions of Matt, to be able to you know, talk with your mom. The bad news is it's only for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it is longer than that in real life.
Okay, I was wondering, because it does seem like an incredibly short amount of time, but you all kind of sit around this impromptu charcuterie board.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Angela Murray is dreaming of this, both Jeff Probst and the charcuterie board all at once. What was the conversation you had with your mom? Do you remember, between her catching you up on what's been going on at home and you, as we see in the episode, telling her about, quote unquote, all the bad things you've done?
Yeah. So, yeah, it was like cheese and crackers and some sort of like white wine was what the spread was at the thing. And, you know, I'm not really a big cheese guy, but, you know, like but that's what's out. So it was just really, it was such a tension release from when there was like the really big vote from the previous night. And I remember I said to my mom, like, hey, I'm doing really good. I don't think I'm going to win. I think I'll get to the end, but I don't think I'm going to win. And that was what I had told her at that time. And I was just trying to talk about, just like, I think it was really important to me, just like putting myself back into that time frame, that I really just wanted to communicate back to my family, like, hey, like, don't worry about me. I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. Like, I'm sure that they were worried. I don't know how much communication they had with everybody, but it was really like very, I used to feel like I wanted to like, just like let them know, like, hey, I'm doing really good here.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually like doing good, like not necessarily like in the game or anything. Like I'm really like, don't worry about me.
I mean, Rob, if you rewatch when the loved ones come out, we see you teary eyed. We'd see you
Yeah.
get verklempt. Did that surprise you at all?
I mean, not really. I mean, it's 30 days. I'm 24 years old. I don't think I would be like if I was on Survivor now and there was a loved ones visit. I think you're just so um physically starved, but also just like starved for like connection, and to be just so cut off from your loved ones. Like I totally get why people have that reaction when you see your loved ones. And I had never like, not talked to my parents for that long, and I just really wanted to let everybody know. I knew they were worried about me also, of like that they did not think this was a great idea what I was doing. So it was really important for me to like, let them know that I was doing okay. My mom also gave me some news from the outside world that the New York Jets, I think at the time that I went to go play on Survivor, I think we're either like 2-6, like or something like that. And then somehow the 2002 Jets, like I think won like I think every single game while I was gone, or like had gone like 5-1 while I was gone. So that was a big, I was really pumped up about that.
It pulled a Maraska, right? You thought it was down and out, and then it ends up stringing off this series of victories towards
It
the
was
end.
a famous Jets season, 2002. But I think they were like 1-4, and Herm Edwards was asked about the game, like playing the game. He's like, "You play to win the game." Hello, maybe I carried that with me into Survivor the Amazon.
I mean, yeah, that's going to be talked about certainly at Tribal Council. Obviously, this moment doesn't have to deal with you, but I'd be remiss if we didn't stop down and talk about Matthew and his mother. And
Yes.
as he calls it, a romantic evening, certainly has a different meaning, especially in the wake of everything with Colby and Gail Donaldson and the Pontiac Aztec heard around the world. But it's a very fun moment. Mario Landa talks about it in the Funny 115 about how you sometimes wonder, as I'm sure you did out there, like looking at these people, living with these people, being like, where did you come from? Like, who do you love? Who do you live with?
Mm-hmm.
And we start to discover a little bit the relationship that Matt has with his mom. He says it's not a typical mother-son relationship. She says that she talks to him at home, even if he's not there. And he says, I love that. I mean, I appreciate that. She's like, don't be formal.
Yeah. Am I being too formal, mother? I think he says.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Mario Lanza compared it to like the Jason Voorhees relationship. I don't know if we want to go that far, but of course, I think the show was certainly perhaps underlining that.
Yeah, well, I think that Mario has talked quite a bit about Matthew and the machete also, so I think that there's some synergy in that comparison. But I think that Matthew was just an interesting guy. He was not necessarily on the same show or playing the same game that so many of us were doing. I think that's sort of like the beauty of classic Survivor. Of it, you would never have like somebody in the midst of new school Survivor where here's somebody who I'm not even clear if he'd ever seen the show before.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like he was very much focused on the survivalist, natural side of
and
things.
that's still to this day. He's an adventurer. Like he's like hiking Mount Everest and going on all sorts of adventures around the world. And I think it's Jenna who says, maybe the Final Tribal Council, she says that, this is just another adventure for Matthew.
Well, much like Everest, you had your own mountain to summit in the form of getting back in the good graces of Jenna and Heidi. But luckily, you get the ability to wine and dine them that night. So can you clarify this for me? So you had wine at the reward. Were you taking those bottles
Yeah,
back
we took
with
the wine
you?
back with us. Yeah.
All right, talk to me about this rager here, Rob. Talk to me about getting faded with some of these kids.
We got faded. So we had like the best day where everybody's like riding high, and we took the wine back with us. We took the cheese back with us. Like we took everything and we brought back. And then we were just like, hey, like this is the best. Look at us. Look at us. You were so mad at me yesterday. I was so happy that everybody like had a nice family visit, and we were just like drinking. We were just partying.
Was there any sort of antics that were going on, or was it just, general malarkey?
I'm trying to remember. I feel like at one version of this, and I think that maybe it has been cut. Maybe if you had like the VCR tape of the VHS tape of this, I think I also sang in this episode. Also, do you have any recollection of this?
No, because I mean that would have been everything good comes in threes, and obviously we have You've Lost That Love and Feeling in the pre-merge. We have Na 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 Hey Hey Goodbye in the merge. So I did not realize there was a post-merge ditty.
Again, don't call it ditty for the partying that we were doing, but I was singing Bob Seger, We've Got Tonight.
Okay.
Who Needs Tomorrow?
Was anyone singing along, or was this just a Rob
it's kind of a boomer song. It really had stuck in my mind from a young age. There was at the risk of further losing any young people who might be listening to this podcast, there was an episode of Cheers where Sam and Rebecca were. It was like the night before Rebecca was getting married to
Frasier.
I think to Robin Colcor. She was marrying like a rich guy, and she got like really wasted. And then and then for whatever reason, that song was like stuck with me.
Well, you had Tonight, and
we got Tonight. Yeah,
you got Tonight, and Butch got a lot of alcohol.
Yeah, I feel bad. He really I think that this was like kind of a bummer for him that this not only that this happened, but also that he he's worked in the school, so I think that this was kind of and I think it also bummed him out that I was like kind of, first of all, a lot of people thought this was me, but that was getting sick, but I think it was kind of a bummer that they showed this in the episode, and I think that this was probably his most embarrassing moment that was on the show. That he had gotten the auction, I think, happens in the Dina boot episode.
No, in the Alex boot episode.
Okay, so it's the previous episode is the auction, and so Butch wins like a covered item, and or maybe do you saw he gets breakfast, right?
Yes, that was of course the infamous moment of where's the best place to have breakfast? Apparently Butch said Cracker Barrel, that ends up getting cut, but he's given a bedroll instead.
Yeah, and Cracker Barrel, and so then he has a bed, and it was like, oh, this was great. But then we had to it had to be disposed of the bedding that Butch had won.
I mean, the good news is even if it remained intact, it was going up in flames in just a couple days' time anyway.
Right. It was a good time to burn the camp down. So,
I think maybe that's nature's disinfectant. They were like, you desecrated the rainforest by puking in it. We have to burn it all down.
Right. So I think then at a point where it's just it's like me and Jenna and Heidi, but I was so happy because I really felt like that like they hated me. Look at us now, and I guess wrongly, because I'll wake up the next morning with like a splitting headache where no Advil in the Amazon rainforest after you wake up with like one hell of a Chardonnay hangover. And I was not thinking fully, but I guess I also maybe was misjudging of like, hey, me and Jenna and Heidi are good now. And so we were not.
Yeah, I mean, your entire relationship with them gets upchucked here. After you mentioned that brief moment of reverie, because this is when, as you mentioned before, you come to Jenna and basically you say, like, I want to go to the end with you. Yeah. I can't go to the end with Matt. I figured, we can get rid of Heidi next, but you're the person I want to sit next to in the end. And that incenses Jenna. to
Mhm.
no end. She storms back to camp, tells Heidi, you and Heidi have this awkward conversation, and then it culminates in a flat out argument, or at least maybe a dressing down of you, ironically enough, coming from Jenna at the camp. What was going through your head as all this was going on and Jenna was really just airing out everything you had just told her?
Yeah, she was trying to get everybody to be upset with me. It didn't really take for Butch or for Matt or for Christy, but they just really wanted to, you know, rake me over the coals. And I think Heidi says to me, like, hey, if you keep, I forget what she said. If you keep like stabbing everybody in the back, you're going to win the game. I was like, oh man,
Yeah,
I hate that.
that's the thing is that they certainly get into something that especially gets talked about a lot in early game Survivor, which is Jen and Heidi talking about like I play with morals, I play
Mhm.
with ethics. I would not necessarily do that. I think they specifically mentioned like I wouldn't stab a friend in the back, and I think that was basically the thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back in a manner of speaking, because I think they feel like, yeah, it was fine when you betrayed Dave and when you betrayed Dina, but because you had something good going on with Alex, that they felt because they explicitly saw examples of you promising this guy and them
Mhm.
that you go to the end together. This was like the first time they had really gotten burned by you, and it smarted quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that there was some cognitive dissonance with the Dina vote where I didn't want to vote out Dina, but that they had felt like that Dina had flipped against Alex. And so that then they were jumping Dina, who had already betrayed them. They felt like that, I was in this alliance of four with them. And so that was kind of like the ultimate betrayal. But I think I certainly could have handled that better in the moment in terms of hearing them out because I think if I just would have like sat there and taken it, like I think I could have like played that for more sympathy with Butch and Matt and Christy. And I was lucky that Butch and Matt and Christy, with all due respect, bless their hearts, they were not experienced players. And I think if like, had they been, like, I think that there may have been like more questions asked to me. And I don't think that I am a good liar in being able to, be able to give them answers. Like Butch asked me at one point, he's like, so what was that? Like, oh, I'm like, they're just making stuff up.
That's
I
what you
don't
say. You're
know.
like, listen, they're grasping at straws.
Yeah. Don't
It
even
does.
worry about it, Butch.
I mean, it seems unintentionally so, but like, there's a little bit of a tea party situation here going on, Rob, where like they just wanted to not even get everything out in the open, as you mentioned. It wasn't necessarily created with the idea of like, let's really get him in a bad position. It just seems like they were incredibly miffed with you and you deciding to say, all right, I know I betrayed you, Jenna, but like we can work together, right? You and I can go to the final two. That was just the thing that sent them over the edge.
I thought that was going to be like, again, bad read all by me, but I thought that she would like that. I mean, it was like, hey, I want to go to the final two with you because I could be, I mean, look at Sandra. Sandra is like, Russell wants to go to the end with me, but I don't know about that. Like yeah, and that hasn't happened yet, like clearly, but in my mind, I was like, hey, I want to take you to the final two. I have a plan for us. I never imagined that it would be screw you in your plan.
Yeah, I mean, did the calculus change after this moment? Jenna literally tells you, like, I will make you hate your life as long as I'm out here.
Yeah. I don't, my hero was always Dr. Will Kirby. And
Mhm.
so I just watched him play. This is 2002. He had just played in 2001. I felt like that he was always like, okay, this person hates me, but they're working with me. And I just thought, I was like, okay, well, like she'll be self-interested enough to want to go with me still to the end of like, okay, well, let me hear me out. Like, hear what my plan is. She was just so mad at me that she didn't ultimately want it. And again, good for her. She won. She won the show. But I did think that she would like be thinking about the game in terms of how do I get to the end now?
Well, the good news for her is at least for a little portion of time the next day, she's going to win immunity in a classic Survivor shuffleboard. But something I forgot until I watched this episode is that, like, due to no offense, no fault of your own, Rob, you were in line for a second immunity win in a row for a good portion of that challenge.
Yes. Butch totally biffed it. Like at the end of the game, that there was a point where this is really, it really is annoying to me because it was like, that not that I played this so great, but it ends up with there's a lot of like ricocheting off of things, and I'm like basically like on the X, and Heidi is in front of me, like blocking me, from, and so I'm like in a really great position, and then I think Butch still has to go, and then Jenna still has to go, and then Butch comes along. I don't even know what he's trying to do. He ends up like he shoots his puck, knocks me off of the puck, and knocks Heidi onto the X, and then sets up, and then Jenna comes in at the end and she knocks Heidi off the X, and she ultimately gets the immunity. But really, all Butch had to do was just leave it alone. I mean, we're on the same team.
The first part of this challenge also involves a Survivor Classic back in that day, which is shooting targets, in this case, ceramic plates with a slingshot. I was very surprised that Matthew completely biffs this portion, because like I believe during the Dina Boot episode, like he handily wins reward when it was the Amazonian weapons, but it seems like this guy is no
Maybe
Dennis
he's
the
throwing
Menace.
it. Who knows? Who knows what he's doing?
That's true. I mean, he is going to memorably do so a few days from now. So maybe he was beta testing the idea.
He doesn't really talk about like what he's thinking.
Well, when you get back to camp, there's a confessional of you. Maybe you didn't have that Speedo sponsorship, but you're going for that Malox sponsorship, because you name drop it here about how you need a bottle of Malox, a fifth of vodka, and a whole carton of cigarettes. What was going through your head at this point?
Well, I do want to say that if I won the immunity challenge, I was going to give the immunity necklace to Christy. That was going to be my that was going to be my overture to her. And I thought that gesture of goodwill was going to get her on my side. And so that was my plan. And I don't think, again, this is like, it's Survivor 6. I think that like if this was modern day Survivor, I think that, if this was Survivor 16, that would be a big mistake. But I don't think that there would have been like the wherewithal where then I was going to, give the necklace to Christy, and then she was going to like flip, and Butch was going to flip on me, and they were all going to like that there was, I don't think that would have happened. I think that me giving the necklace to Christy, I think that would have bought me goodwill, that she would have voted with us, because ultimately she did vote with us. So I think she was kind of on the fence in terms of what she wanted, and I think that gesture of goodwill like would have put her over the edge, and we would have voted out either Jenna or Heidi.
Did she have any awareness of this? Like, did you make this known to her? Would this have surprised her?
No, because I don't think I had the like I knew in my head that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to like promise it to her and then not have done it. But I thought that would have been the thing I could have given to her that would have gotten her to side with us, because it seemed like she was like, well, I don't know. So yeah, I felt like that I was very much like my stomach was in a knot. It was, now we had a couple of hours back at camp, and I said to Christy, what are we going to do? And then she was like, yeah, I don't know. I got to see. I'll know when I have the pen in my hand. I'm like, well, this isn't a good answer. And then I went to the producers, and I had asked them like, hey, so what happens if it's a 3-3 tie? This had not been, there was no precedent for this in my mind.
They did, I mean, obviously we know that it would be a rock draw, but after everything with the Purple Rock and Marquesas, I think a lot of it was still unknown out there.
But that was the final four. And so that there really was no, like there had not been a tie vote prior to the final four, other than in like pre-merge Survivor Africa, where then we're going to tiebreaker questions.
Would have been great for you. You just won a little bit of a trivia competition when you got that bag of pieces.
Yeah. Jeff Varner gets voted out on previous votes, but that's not the rule anymore. So I was like trying to ask the producers, so what if it's 3 votes? If it's 3-3, what happens? And they're like, you'll find out at tribal council. I'm like, you really should like tell me the rules. Like that would be good. So I was very much like trying to like come up with my own thoughts of like, well, how do I get out of this? And I was like really just like racking my brain, and I was in such a corner. And then I just thought about what if we voted out Christy? And I remember like sort of like where I was. I like thought of it. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And I went to Jenna and Heidi. And I think you see me talking to Heidi in the episode. I'm like, you just want to make this like real easy and vote out Christy. And they both were like, they jumped at it. They were like, yeah, we do. We really do want to vote out Christy.
Were you surprised by that, considering how much they had chewed you out not 24 hours prior?
I was, but I had such a good relationship with them prior to that. And we had like Jenna was like a sister to me, and Heidi and I always had like I felt like a special relationship that we always were like good vibes the whole way through. And you know, I think that they did up until that one time, that one day, very much enjoy my personal company. They really, for the prior 30 days, did not really enjoy the company of Christy. And I think at the opportunity of like that they had a sure thing where they could stay in the game, they they jumped at it. And there was a lot of contingencies of, okay, so I told Matt about the plan, but we didn't tell Butch about the plan. And this
he
was
wasn't
like,
in the chain.
I mean, I don't know how many times in prior, like, this is very early days of Survivor. How many times, like, right before Tribal Council, the vote is changing, and so this is like, when I look at this episode, I do feel like that this is kind of like a new era coded situation where it's like the sun is going down. We're getting ready to go to Tribal Council. Like the plan isn't locked in, and we're really scrambling. And so I went to Jenna and Heidi. And I said, okay, here's the deal. Like, nobody's allowed to be alone with Christy. So that
Buddy system.
you keep eyes on us. We keep eyes on you. Nobody goes to talk to Christy because, there is a world where now, okay, we vote for, me and Matt vote for Christy, and then they vote for, like they could have 3-2-1 me, where Jenna and Heidi could have voted with Christy to vote against me. Me and Matt vote for Christy, and Butch still votes for Jenna or Heidi, whoever doesn't have the necklace. And I mean, like, really tip my cap. But that wasn't even that's not even invented yet. And I did not think that was something that like Jenna and Heidi with love were capable of executing. But the contingency was nobody was allowed to talk to Christy. And so that was the plan. And we were going to leave Butch out of it. We weren't going to tell him. And he, I don't think, would have liked it. I think he was excited. And he still, like, to this day, if he calls me at a certain hour of the day, will say, like, we shouldn't have voted out Christy. That was the mistake. That was it.
I mean, I think people more so point towards what happened next as the mistake when you had like the actual binary choice between the two. But it is interesting to think about, especially because this will be the first of, I think, the 4 record-tying immunity wins that Jenna will have. What happens in that situation. I mean, I am curious if Christy was less wishy-washy, because she does vote for Jenna at the end of the day. If she was telling you, I'm locked in, does any of this happen?
Well, you know what? So when we're getting mic'd up, we go to Tribal Council, and before Tribal Council you go in the tent, and Christy like pulls me aside. They put up the mics on us, and she's like, "Hey, I'm voting with you." I wish you should have told me that like an hour ago.
You could have made it a live Tribal Council if you wanted to.
That was but I was loving the idea of, because I felt like I was losing Christy, but I felt like, Mike, that I was getting back 2 jury votes. Like I was like, okay, Jen and Heidi don't hate me anymore. I unrang the bell that I rang with voting out Alex, no pun intended, who that I went from they hated my guts to they were back working with me. And I felt like that their jury votes were back in play. And I thought that there was a chance that I could win the game. And ultimately, I still felt like that Christy's going to the jury and she's not going to be mad at me. She hates Jenna and Heidi. And so like, I felt like that there was like an opportunity to still, I thought I was having my cake and eating it too. I was so happy that this was what was coming on. I felt like that this was like such a great idea in the moment. And so also it was too late for Christy. And I kind of was like really loving that. I felt like that she overplayed her hand.
What was Matt's reaction when you came to him with this plan, considering that I think from his perspective, he thought that you 4 were locked in until the end?
I think that he was on board with it. I don't think he has a confessional about it in the episode, but I think he seemed like I feel like that he was very much on like the idea of like people getting like overconfident, and like I think he liked that narrative. Butch was very down about it afterwards that it happened. But, I felt like, okay, now I felt like, okay, I'm really locked in with Matt after
Yeah.
this.
I mean, you talk about overconfidence. Christy obviously will have this moment when she's talking to her boyfriend at the family visit, talking about how, like, I'm guaranteed Final Four. She outright says, I'm in control of
I
this
have the
vote.
power, she says.
And I think, again, that's what's not to, kneecap suck too much, but I think that's what's so interesting about this move is because I think ordinarily there certainly had been situations in the 5.5 seasons of Survivor prior to this of people being in the middle. Heck, you yourself were in that position the very last round. But I think it's this idea where up until this point, everyone kind of thought that person in the middle was untouchable, right?
Mhm.
Because you needed their vote. And this is going to be a bit of an odd comparison, but almost like when Boston Rob and Sean go after Hunter, that the kind of illusion was shattered at that point of like, oh, this person that is usually a lock to make the merge, it can be vulnerable. We can vote for them at any point in time. Here, I think there's a reason why we've seen this happen time and time again of just because you feel like you're in the middle, as a recently crowned winner once said, sometimes that means you get run over at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think it really was an important season in the run of the show where it was the season where I think anything could happen. The first, and I think that then Pearl Islands comes along and really builds on it and I think overshadows it. But I think that like where Marquesas had like the one moment where everything switched, but then it was just sort of like a pagonging in the other direction. And this was the first season where the post merge was really fluid. And I think that it was a little bit of a flash forward into what Survivor is going to ultimately become, for better or for worse, where that there is this game that could go in any different number of directions and nobody is actually that safe. And recognizing your place in the alliance is a big part of the show. And this was like this stretch right here of like Dina and Alex and Christy, I think is really like the epitome of that, to quote Pascal.
Yeah, I think it's this idea that nobody is incredibly safe. Now, obviously, nowadays you have immunities and you have various advantages and items that might make you literally safe. But again, this idea of Christy feeling like you need my vote, and you can say, how about I make you the vote? There's just such an interesting, especially as you were mentioning, in such a short amount of time as well. No, I think a lot of that is predicated on Jen and Heidi's feelings towards her, which I think is good on your part for being able to clock that of like, they hate me now, but they've hated Christy for a lot longer. But I do think it is a really notable thing that truly goes to show that as much as you might feel like your position is perfect, if other people are clocking that as well, it could make you public enemy number one.
Yeah. And I also want to note that there's also history made where Jenna gives the immunity necklace to Heidi in this episode.
Let's talk about that because I think obviously when we look back upon famous, giftings of the immunity necklace, of course, insert clip number 1,357,554 of Eric Reichenbach giving up the necklace. People also talk about Braden Hance giving up the necklace. We have Chris Underwood and Heidi doing it for Final Four fire making reasons, but like, this is far and away the unsung hero, for lack of a better term. Was this a big deal in the moment? I'm assuming not, considering that you were going to do it yourself had you not won immunity.
It was a nothing burger. I think that we had talked about a lot that it had never happened. And I think that this was Jenna. I think that this was really, I definitely seen the spin of like, wow, like this was like next level of like Jenna, like, but I mean, Butch still votes for Jenna. Like there was no, like, it was like, it wasn't like, oh my God, what do we do now? Like Butch, unprompted, votes for Jenna in this spot. Like, okay, well, now Heidi has the necklace. I'm voting for Jenna. There wasn't even a discussion.
I was going to say there wasn't any sort of like looks and whisperings to one another when she gave up the necklace.
No, it's kind of like, okay. I think, and does, I guess Christy also votes for Jenna. Also, right?
She does, yeah. So I guess maybe you had worked into that contingency plan, or everyone had just operated under that logic of like,
yeah, it's
okay,
like, okay, well,
Jenna,
we'll just vote for the other one. So it wasn't any sort of thing like when like next level, like checkmate. I'm giving the necklace to Heidi. I think that, and in the next episode, I think there's gonna like Jenna's gonna talk about how she wants to leave. Like, I really do feel like Heidi was doing a number on Jenna of so I don't know how much Heidi had also been like pushing for the necklace also. So I don't know if that was part of it because it's not in the episode, but it was just like, okay, they're just like, they love each other. They're best friends.
Well, we're on the Survivor time trip. Let's explore an alternate universe here. Let's thumb through the almanac, knowing what we
Sure.
know now. So let's say that, again, you decide to not go down this path and you stick with the 4 and you vote out Jenna. In this case, she still gives
Okay.
immunity to Heidi, and Christy's still in the game at the final
Does she
5.
go down? Is she the new Eric Reichenbach? Is she the first Eric Reichenbach?
I get that could be the case of like worst move ever. But I mean, I'm assuming, all the same challenge results as they are in the actual season proper. What do you think happens? I guess in particular, the one thing I'm most curious about is like, does Matt still snake you in the end, you think, no matter who you get rid of here?
There's a couple different ways to look at this. And, I've thought about, honestly, like I've thought about it a fair amount, but I've never really like been like up at night, like, oh man, if this would change this one thing, it would have been, Survivor Amazon would have been mine. Again, obviously, like as time has gone on, like I'm very content with how things have worked out. But in this scenario where, okay, Jenna gets voted out, she's the new Eric Reichenbach, dumbest move ever, giving the necklace to Heidi. Then at the final 5 immunity, Matt is going to win the immunity challenge. I would presume then Heidi gets voted out at the final 5. Final 4 is me, frankly, Christy in the blindfold challenge. I'm not sure if she ultimately ends up being the winner there. Kind of like a little rude, I think, frankly, to put Christy in the blindfold challenge. Nevertheless, then here comes Matt, who was, I think, closer to winning that challenge. And then so Matt, I think, would win immunity at the final 4. I mean, I presume, but I mean, I guess it's possible at some point that Matt and Butch or Matt, Butch, and Christy could have said, why don't we just find out Rob? Like, what's he bringing to the table? So it is possible that ultimately, like, I don't want to just say like, oh, I would have like just outsmarted. Honestly, at the final 4, I don't know why they didn't vote me out then. I was like, oh, I guess they're going to vote me out now. And then Jenna and Matt were like, yeah, Butch doesn't deserve to be here. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Totally.
Sure.
And so I really was surprised that they didn't just take a shot at me there. So it's hard to say what they would have done because I know what would have been the logical move that made sense, but I can't really assign to any of them what the, like, between when we're talking about, like, what would 2002 Matthew von Ertfelder, Butch, and Christy have done? I think I could have had some influence there. I think I probably would have like leaned hard on the like, all right, Matt and Butch, like we're the 3 amigos.
Bro
like,
down.
Let's go. And Christy, she did a good job. We promised her final 4. And I don't know. Is it possible that if that Butch could have outlasted me on the in the final 3 challenge?
Yeah, the power of belief.
Yeah, I mean Matthew maybe feels like, okay, well, Rob and Butch are both gonna take me to the end, and so maybe Butch. I mean, Butch was doing pretty good on the challenge that we did where Jen and Heidi took off their clothes for chocolate and peanut butter. So who's to say?
Yeah, I mean, would have been a very interesting ending no matter what. But regardless, it leads to an incredibly interesting outcome and a very interesting reaction from Christy, who is devastated.
Yeah.
Obviously did not see this coming. I mean, again, I think that I don't think it necessarily provides these big blindside reactions that we're used to seeing. But did you clock any major surprises from both the people in Tribal Council and the jury, especially in response to this?
I don't really remember. It did seem like in the jury, like Dina and Alex and Dave were a little bit like they kind of like play it like they know, like at the moment where Christy is like saying that she's in charge, she shouldn't have done that. But I don't know if they had a big reaction.
So Christy rather infamously says in her final words,
yes,
quote, "I'm going to make sure those evil freaking stepsisters of mine are not going to win the $1 million." And I want you to correct the record a little bit here, Rob, because certainly at the time, there was a lot of hoopla around the fact that Christy does vote for Jenna, and perhaps some theories of, okay, did Christy misunderstand Jeff when he said that you're voting for a winner tonight? She couldn't read his lips, and so thought she was voting Jen out, essentially pulling a topaz before there was a topaz. But I know you spent a limited amount of time in Ponderosa after being voted out. Did you get a sense as to why Christy did ultimately vote for Jenna instead of Matt?
No, and I don't think I even knew that she did until it was the live finale. So that
Mm.
was kind of a big surprise for me going into that night. I didn't talk to anybody about my jury vote. I actually, like, when I talked to Jenna, and I used to talk to her a lot, like, as the season was airing, I really did lead her to believe that I had voted for Matt. I would have wanted, like, one more blindside.
Careful.
But
People have recently reported that that's not good to do to potential finalists.
Yeah. Well, but she had won. She was the winner. So I had, was like having some fun with her about like whether or not I voted for her. But I think that we all thought that Christy would have voted for Matt.
Has she ever been on the record anywhere saying why she did it? I don't think I've been able to figure that out in my
I think she
research.
has said no, that there was reasons why, that she thought that Jenna had better answers, and so I Christy has said in numerous interviews after the fact that she voted for Jenna to win.
We've had a number of times had the great opportunity to listen to you reconnect with some of your Amazon cast members over the course of RHAP as a podcast. But who would you say in your cast you're closest with? Who do you talk to the most out of the, dozen plus people that you headed into the Amazon rainforest with almost 25 years ago?
I it's kind of sad for me to say. I really, but I kind of like, over the years it was Jenna, and I feel like we've lost touch over the last 10 or so years. And she doesn't have a big public persona. She had done a Talking with T-Bird. We had a
Hmm.
great Talking with T-Bird with Heidi, which was actually
Yeah.
one of my favorites. I hear from Butch every now and then,
When he calls
and
you up and tells you how much you made the wrong choice at the final six.
he'll do that. I feel like there was something recently. Oh, I think maybe I was talking to him. We did like a Survivor mailbag where he talked about what happens if this happened, and Butch like weighed in on that on an Instagram message. I'll get a message from Dina every now and then, but ultimately, like, I'm not super, like, I'm probably more in contact with some of my castmates from Survivor All Stars.
So the last thing I do want to ask is one that we've talked about a bit with our previous guests as well, which is the reaction to watching yourself back. And you have been on record quite a few times about how maybe from a certain salacious perspective, you don't love the 24-year-old version of yourself that we saw on the Amazon. But I guess I would say through the lens of this specifically, this gameplay that you were able to, from your perspective, like able to kind of pull yourself out from this hole you dug yourself in to survive the round. How do you look back on that and watching sort of your origin story for a very long, roller coaster of a career?
Yeah, well, a lot of the stuff that I do have regrets about is luckily in the first half of the season. So there's not, there's nothing that I caught here that really was like want to take that back. Maybe there's a couple things like in the last couple episodes, but it's, I think it's interesting, especially with a modern lens, to look back at see some of the things that were going on here, where to me it's like a harbinger of like where the game is ultimately going to go. And it's not like an instant shift, but I think that this is where the game is sort of like, and I had recently watched some clips from like Borneo and like from the early days of Survivor, and we're sort of like in the evolution of what the show is going to be. You can sort of like, when you watch like the early days of the show, it's like unrecognizable that this is the same thing that you're having in Survivor 50 and Survivor 51. Here, it kind of is starting to feel like this is not totally dissimilar to what you would see like in the modern day of Survivor. So I think that it's cool to watch like how the game progressed here. And I think that while ultimately, like, was this the optimal move to get me to the end? Hard to say. I mean, maybe not, but it was like, I think, a really interesting inflection point in the run of the show.
I completely agree. And I think that's something that cannot be stated enough in these early seasons of Survivor is I think nowadays we take a lot of no-brainer moves for granted. Where I
Hmm.
think nowadays, again, we've seen it a number of times, people be like, oh yeah, of course, this person's in the middle, but like it'd be better if we got her out, as
Yeah.
opposed to going after someone who's an op, yes, but on the other side that I, could feasibly take to the end. I feel like in these early days between, what you did here between the fall of the Road to Four, even some of the stuff that Johnny Fairplay and Burton were doing the next season. There was a lot of like, this hasn't happened before, but could I try this? And the success results may vary, but I think that it's just really interesting to track in the first, I'd say 10 seasons or 10 years even of the show, things that people were willing to try that had no historical precedent. They did not have volumes upon volumes, seasons of seasons to look back on and be like, oh, I think I could do this. This is innovation just at the tops of people's minds based on what they were thinking in that moment. But it causes these seismic shifts without even realizing it.
Yeah. Would I want to spend a lot of time with 24-year-old me? I think probably not. But like when I look back, like I'm proud of 24-year-old me. I think about that a lot in terms of like what was the version of me that was this age and what was the version of me that was this age. And so like I think that the 24-year-old version of me, like I'm proud of him for like taking risks and sending in a tape to go and be on the show and to go out there and then, take this opportunity and to make kind of risky moves when he had the opportunity. And I think that that was a cool thing that he did. And I'm really glad that he did those things.
That makes me so happy. I'm curious, speaking of, I guess, talking to younger versions of yourself, I know you had mentioned showing your sons your immunity win at one point. How much have they seen of Amazon at this point?
Really not much. I think we watched like the first episode. Nicole really doesn't like it and really doesn't want them to see. I think maybe it's a bad influence on them. But yeah, I did. I told the story a bunch when it happened about that. We had watched that Dominic had asked me, Dad, did you ever win the immunity necklace? And I said, yeah, let me show you. And I pulled up from the previous episode where I win the touchy subjects challenge. And then they were like, first, like, Dad, this is a quiz? What is this, Big Brother? I was like, listen, this is what the challenge is.
And some would say that's a more impressive win, perhaps, than anyone can, stand and hold a ball up or solve a puzzle. You had to have your finger on the pulse of the tribe.
Right. But the first question was like, who in the tribe do you have a crush on? And they were like, oh my God, why are they doing this? They asked the question like, who would you like to see pose naked in a magazine? And then I think that Nicole had come down the stairs at that point. And I was like,
Let's say, to be fair, again, I think a lot has been made, especially from yourself, about how, again, perhaps lascivious you were towards certain contestants. But, like, that's the general vibe of this season. This really was, like, MTV Spring Break coded, where you mentioned, again, I watched that final 7 episode, Jeff's talking about, like, the auction. He's like, come on, Heidi, strut your stuff. Come up and do this. And obviously, like, the chocolate and peanut butter comes out. There's mention of that as well. So it kind of was, as I mentioned before, a bit of an equal opportunity offender in terms of the tone of the season.
It was a different time, and we've had so much growth, and the show has, we all have, the viewers have.
I am so happy that you suggested to do this.
This was a fun one.
Yeah, this made my heart so happy. Apologies for the word vomit, not to be confused with the vomit that Butch had off the side of the shelter after too much wine. But I loved getting to peek inside your head. And again, I think is a really not only important episode for the show, but there's a lot going on as well. There's a lot of drama happening. There's obviously this big flip, the family visits going on. There's a lot packed into this 42-minute period. In what I would say, yes, the final 7 vote is massive for your game in the season. But like, I think when it comes to your legacy as a Survivor player, I think this is 1A.
Yeah, there's just the point where I'm like monologuing with the snake of talking about how that, I'm a lone wolf and I'm an alliance of one. I don't think anybody had ever said those types of things on the show before.
Yeah, I don't think that Survivor was operated in a mercenary-like level. If they did, it was more so from the map variety, right? Of like, this person's so far out there, they don't know what's going on. For you, it was more so kind of like a killer for hire of like, I don't care who it is, I'm taking them out.
Yeah, I take the bottom feeders and I offer them the dream of going to the end. And like, I think that was like an interesting philosophy of like, who are the people who are out of the power and can you work with them and try to take them to like group them up in terms of numbers?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think there's been a lot of discussion as well of like, oh, were you a villain? I'll admit, Rob, there were certainly points here where, the eventual winner of the season says she hates your guts and you talk about scooping up the bottom feeders. And it's a little bit like, I could see a little Machiavellian aspects to you.
Sure. But what are you going to do? This episode is also, I believe, takes place on May 1st or airs on May 1st, 2023, which is canonically the dating anniversary of myself and the First Lady of Podcasting.
Wow, it was a big night for you in many ways.
Big night.
Big night. But did you have a watch party for this episode?
Yes.
Okay, so you were really riding the high. This is like your own family visit where you were like, listen, I'm drunk on life right now. I just pulled off this big move, and now I'm taking a big swing on the woman I love.
Big night for me, but bigger night for my mom.
That's also true. Yeah, Roseanne got her her national TV
were
periods.
So excited. They had all these people over, and that my mom was on TV.
Oh my God. Again, incredible episode for the Cesternino family in more ways than one.
Yes. Okay. Mike, what's coming up for you?
So, of course, Big Brother. We are hitting the halfway point of that season. So I've got my usual stuff going on there with Parade. I mean, the thing that I will plug is that we will be taking a brief recess from the time trip. We will not have a podcast coming out next week for good reason, because you and I will be paddling our own respective native Amazonian boats. Hopefully we don't have to swim our way to Milwaukee, but we'll be attending RHAPCon, which should be incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Fun times ahead next week. So looking forward to seeing everybody in person next week, especially you, Mike.
Yeah, we've got a lot of really fun things in the planning stages, a lot of malarkey happening. And who knows, maybe we can have Rob reprise his karaoke number that didn't make the edit by the end of the 3-day sojourn there.
Like too much of a ballad. I think you want to be upbeat for karaoke.
I guess so, but I mean, if it encapsulated the mood, right? Where like everyone was like very much in their feels. I think you were able to really embody the spirit of what was happening. You were your own Russ Landau.
Yes. So I can't imagine how much money they had to pay for that to be in the episode way back when. How much money they wasted on me singing on Survivor. All right. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye. This is RHAP. We know reality TV.